The structure and inefficiencies of the used car parts industry prepared for Dr. Stuart Knapshin of Kennesaw State University, Strategic Management Spring Semester 2019. What is the structure of the used automotive parts market and why does that structure exist? The used car parts wholesaling industry in the United States is auto recycling. The industry is built around the concept of disassembling vehicles and selling those parts to body shops, mechanics, and individuals as less expensive substitutes to new parts. In some cases, the industry provides replacement parts that are no longer available from manufacturers. The industry produces $5.8 billion in revenue each year, with an anticipated growth rate of 1.9% for the next several years. It is mature and saturated, rivalry is high with low barriers of entry. The industry is fragmented, mostly consisting of small salvage operations that sell parts 30 to 70% less than new parts offerings, which is the main way used parts wholesalers compete with original equipment manufacturers. Revenue generally moves with economic cycles, but at a slightly slower rate. As disposable income increases, demand for the industry's products increases, but at a slower rate. Increased disposable income has a mixed effect on demand because some consumers choose to spend this increased income on used automobile parts and others choose to just buy new automobiles instead of paying for repairs. These new automobiles increase the total number of vehicles on the road and thus the number of vehicles that potentially need used vehicle parts for repair. Initially, demand falls because these vehicles need less repair earlier in their life, and in theory, the supply of used parts increases because an older auto finds its way to the salvage yard when a new vehicle is purchased. Demand is also closely tied to average vehicle age in the U.S. and number of miles that a vehicle has been driven. Because as age and mileage go up, automobile parts usage goes up as well. Average age of the U.S. fleet currently stands right below 12 years. Most auto recyclers choose to locate close to big cities, but in rural areas where they can serve their less affluent and cost-conscious do-it-yourself customers and obtain large spaces needed to dismantle and store automobiles and parts that have been harvested. Most source automobiles locally and regionally and sell to local and regional customers. Some have turned to internet sales to expand their customer base, but many car parts are heavy or cumbersome and expensive to transport. Transportation costs are a big factor in incentivizing used car parts wholesalers to do business locally. The industry is very fragmented, with most businesses being independent small operators with only one or two locations serving these local markets. Used car parts wholesaling is not very capital intensive, but highly labor intensive. Dismantling, cataloging, cleaning, and the stocking of parts is all done by human labor. It's worth noting that automobile recycling is a recycling success story in that 100% of vehicles are recycled, making the automobile the most recycled consumer product, and not because of public outcry, but because profitable business models support it. Once autos are stripped of their salvageable parts, the hulks are shredded into scrap metal, which is sold to steel mills or scrap brokers, with only the shredded rubber, plastics, and glass being discarded into landfills. Around 86% of a vehicle content is recycled. So the industry structure is primarily determined by consumers looking for a good value, recycling that makes good business sense, and the transportation issues surrounding heavy and bulky items. What causes inefficiencies in the used automotive parts market, and what differentiates highly successful used automobile parts businesses from the pack? In order to identify inefficiencies in the used automotive parts market, let's examine the highly efficient operations of industry leader LKQ Corporation, who boasts a 21.9% market share in the industry. And in doing so, we can examine what differentiates highly successful firms from not so successful firms. LKQ is in the alternative parts business. They do have divisions that sell new aftermarket products, which are replacement parts and accessories not produced by the original manufacturers. But for the purpose of this video, we will concentrate on their wholesale division and self-service division, offering recycled collision and mechanical products, refurbished products such as wheels and lights, and remanufactured engines and transmissions. LKQ has been expanding its market share dramatically over the last decade through acquisition of smaller players, allowing it to operate more efficiently and maintain larger profit margins. At the same time, some less profitable operators are exiting the industry because of the increased competition. A wholesale location for LKQ will consist of walk-up windows for retail customers, phone operators for body shop and garages looking for parts, garages for dismantling autos, a warehouse, and a yard for automobile hulks. End-of-life autos are purchased mostly through salvage auctions and are generally years 2004 and 2005 and up. The autos are then partially dismantled by LKQ mechanics in an effort to inventory items that cannot be left out in the elements or might get beat up on the yard by roaming fork trucks. Items such as engines, transmissions, starters, alternators, steering racks, doors, fenders, hoods, transfer cases, drive axles, and radios. Additional parts are picked as needed, and in some cases entire front ends will be separated from the body of the vehicle and transported to the body shop customers. As a side note, insurance companies often dictate if used parts can be used in a repair, actually preferring recycled parts because of their lower costs. But this becomes a problem for auto manufacturers who are still warranting new vehicles and only allow the use of new parts because of decreased failure rates, lowering the possibility of malfunction and even damage to the vehicle. The company seeks to be a one-stop shop for its customers, competing on parts availability, convenience, and brand recognition. It does this by stocking a broad range of inventory locally, and parts that are not immediately available can be made available quickly through the company's distribution network, keeping fulfillment rates high and customers satisfied. For example, if a body shop orders a used body panel in Savannah, but it is not available in local inventory, that location can locate it through an electronic exchange process at another location. So in the case of the Savannah location, it has a semi-truck that leaves Savannah every afternoon for an Atlanta distribution center where it meets trucks from other locations and exchanges freight in a cross-dock logistics setup. That body panel can then come back to Savannah on the return ride and be delivered by the company's local drivers the next day. This is an enormous advantage over the local salvage yard that may or may not be able to fulfill a customer's orders. Some smaller players have turned to internet sales to expand their customer base, but many car parts are heavy or cumbersome and expensive to transport. Transportation costs are a big factor in wholesalers doing business locally and a reason that they remain stagnant and are having problems competing with high-performing firms such as LKQ. And in addition, LKQ places a lot of emphasis on strong relationships with insurance companies and body shops, so you can clearly see how the company will continue to be able to dominate the industry and capture market share with their offering. LKQ also competes by maintaining a robust eBay presence and online shopping through their website. The company has vertically integrated by extracting the metals of catalytic converters and melting unused wheels in its aluminum furnaces so the metal can be sold to aluminum ingot consumers, giving the company another competitive advantage and maximizing profits. LKQ also competes with the self-service business model typically called pick a part or pick your part. Consumers are charged a small fee to access the salvage yard and then charged for the parts that they harvest. Typically, vehicles destined for the pick your part yard are older and of lower value than vehicles used in wholesale operations. Vehicles are kept 30 to 120 days before they are scrapped. LKQ attempts to differentiate itself from other competitors by quality of inventory, size or selection of autos, and a company app that notifies consumers when a vehicle they might be interested in becomes available. not only locally, but in other yards around the nation, which identifies another inefficiency for local operations still taking phone calls from customers to determine inventory. As a side note, I found what the company identifies as threats to be of interest, as they are actually threats to the entire industry. Ultimately, the industry depends on accidents and mechanical failures. As manufacturers install accident avoidance systems in new vehicles, the number of accidents and the severity of those accidents could decrease. As more and more vehicles are equipped with data transmitting systems such as OnStar, new car dealers will have an advantage over alternative suppliers of parts because vehicle owners will first be recommended to affiliated new car dealerships for repairs, which use mainly OEM parts. And lastly, increased sales of electric cars could have a material impact on engine and transmission sales, which are large revenue generators for the industry. In conclusion, LKQ will continue to consolidate the used vehicle parts wholesaling industry. With their enormous data processing capabilities that it uses in areas such as streamlining inventory controls, determining historical demand, and purchasing applications, the company is able to make better and more informed business decisions than lesser competitors. Some local recycling companies are forming cooperative efforts recognizing the efficiencies that need to increase in order to continue to compete in the industry. So all in all, LKQ is changing the industry for the best by pioneering territory that was once a mesh of local independent wholesalers and turning it into a highly efficient industrial success story for the modern economy, even in spite of the challenges of streamlining a business with so many facets to master.